tonight in this podcast. There is a quiet reflection on a subtle shift in the air that happens at the group dinner when the bill finally arrives. The plates are cleared. The ambient noise of the restaurant seems to fade just a tiny fraction, and a small leather folder is placed right in the center of the table.
Right, and you can almost feel the silent calculations happening around you.
Yeah, there's this sudden tension. It's the unspoken weight of keeping the peace. It's the quiet measuring of relationships against dollars.
And it's really this delicate, completely invisible dance of social harmony.
It is. And to figure out exactly why we do this, we are going to connect some seemingly unrelated dots today in this deep dive.
We have a lot of fascinating ground to cover.
We really do. We are going to look at behavioral economic studies on something called the latte factor and the pain of paying.
Right, and we'll bring in research on AI-mediated exchange theory and how peer-to-peer payments are actually changing our behavior.
Yeah, and then we'll get into some game theory physics regarding the body reservoir and cognitive exertion, plus social psychology on reciprocity and self-disclosure.
And finally, we'll dive into the insights around the emotional labor tax.
Exactly, because our mission today is to unpack the quiet, invisible financial and emotional costs of maintaining social harmony. We want to understand the profoundly human reasons why we absorb these costs.
It's something we all do constantly without even realizing it.
You do. So I just want to welcome you, the listener, directly. Pull up a chair. We're so incredibly glad you are here as the third person at this table with us.
I think the best place to start is just by really stepping into that scene you mentioned.
Yeah, let's paint the human picture before we even touch any of the science.
Let's do it.
Okay, so picture this. You are at a nice restaurant. There are, let's say, 8 of you in total.
That's a good size for a dinner party.
Right. And it's a mix of people. Some are very close friends you've known for years, maybe a couple of acquaintances from work, and a partner of a friend you're just meeting for the very first time.
So there's a bit of a dynamic to navigate.
Exactly. But the conversation has been flowing effortlessly. The lighting is low. There is a lot of laughter. It is, by all accounts, just a genuinely good evening.
The exact kind of evening where your brain is completely focused on connection, you know.
Right.
You're reading the room, you're being present. You are not in a state of calculation.
Yeah, you're just enjoying yourself. But you are also navigating your own reality. You happen to be on a bit of a budget this week, or, I don't know, maybe you just weren't that hungry.
Sure.
So you looked at the menu earlier, you looked past the ribeyes and the imported seafood, and you made a conscious, intentional choice.
You knew what you wanted.
Exactly. You ordered a simple pasta dish for $24, and you ordered a single glass of house wine for $9. That's it.
Very reasonable.
Right. You drank tap water for the rest of the night. Your true share of the meal, before tax and tip, is exactly $33.
Which is a bounded decision. You knew exactly what you were doing.
But then the end of the meal comes. The waiter drops off the bill. The total for the table is $480.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And someone across the table, perhaps the person who enthusiastically ordered the steak, a couple of sides for the table, and 3 craft cocktails, picks up the receipt.
I think we all know this person.
We do. They give it a quick, casual glance, and they say the phrase that stops your heart just a little bit.
Let's just split it evenly.
Yes. Let's just split it evenly. It's easier. Everyone put in 60.
And right there, the atmosphere in the room, or at least in your head, shifts completely.
Totally. You hear the number, $60. You do the mental math instantly.
Because your share was $33.
Right. $33 was your meal. They want $60. You just overpaid by $27.
That's almost double what you actually ate.
It is. You notice it. You feel that slight visceral drop in your stomach. The discrepancy is glaring to you.
$27 isn't just pocket change.
No, it's real money. But you look around the table, everyone else is nodding. They are pulling out their wallets.
The momentum is already going.
Exactly. The person next to you is already handing over their credit card and laughing at a joke someone just told.
So the social pressure at that exact second is completely overwhelmingly against you.
It really is. So what do? You don't say anything? You don't raise your hand and say, well, hold on. I only had the pasta and 1 glass of wine.
Right, because that ruins the vibe.
Yeah. You just smile, you put on a pleasant, agreeable face, you hand over your card, and you swallow the difference.
You just eat the cost.
You do. You pay the $60. You absorb that $27 overpayment just to keep the evening moving smoothly.
Because you want to avoid the friction.
Exactly. You choose not to be perceived as the cheap one or the difficult one, or the person who forces the waiter to run 8 separate transactions while everyone just sits there in awkward silence.
And that quiet decision, that specific moment of swallowing the cost, is not a random quirk of your personality.
No, it happens all the time.
It is a profoundly universal behavior, and we actually have a name for it. We call this concept social friction avoidance.
Social friction avoidance.
Yes, and the result of that avoidance is what we term the invisible social toll.
Oh, I love that phrasing. So that is what this is called.
Exactly. It is essentially a silent tax that you pay.
Yeah.
But what is critical to understand here is that you are paying this tax in 2 currencies simultaneously.
Okay, 2 currencies. How so?
Well, first, you are paying in the financial currency the actual tangible $27 that just left your group account.
Right, the literal money.
Right. But second, and honestly often more importantly, you are paying an emotional currency. You are buying group harmony. You are actively paying to avoid the reputational cost of conflict.
Because the alternative, starting the table, bringing out the calculator, separating the items, that feels like it carries a social cost that is far more expensive than $27.
Exactly. It's a calculation, even if it's a subconscious one. And when we zoom out and look at this behavior in the context of how we are traditionally taught to manage our money, it exposes this massive, almost humorous contradiction.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, consider the most famous piece of personal finance advice of the last, 2 decades.
Oh, you mean the latte factor.
The latte factor. David Bach popularized this concept back in 2003, and it completely took over the cultural conversation about money.
Yeah, I remember reading about it everywhere. The premise is so simple. If you just skip buying that $5 latte at the coffee shop every single morning, and instead you invest that $5 at a 10% annual return, after 40 years, you will have nearly $1 million. I think the specific math usually cited is around $948,000.
Yeah, nearly $1 million. And to be clear, the mathematical formula behind the latte factor is completely accurate.
The math checks out.
It does. $5 a day is $1,825 a year. If you compound that over decades, you do end up with a fortune.
Right.
But while the arithmetic is sound, the behavioral psychology beneath the latte factor is entirely backwards.
Wait, why is it backwards? I mean, I've had friends who aggressively track every single coffee they buy because they're terrified of ruining their financial future.
Here.
How is that psychology wrong?
It comes down to a concept called visibility bias. Buying a latte is a highly visible, conscious, solo decision.
Okay.
Think about the actual mechanics of it. You walk up to the counter alone, you interact with the barista alone, you order the drink, you physically tap your card or hand over cash for that specific isolated $5 transaction.
Right. It's very deliberate.
Exactly. It is meticulously tracked. You can open your banking app later that afternoon and see a very clear line item that says, coffee shop, $5. It is entirely within your control.
But the dinner overpayment is the exact opposite of that.
Precisely. The $27 overpayment at the group dinner is completely invisible. It is a deeply social interaction, not a solo one.
Yeah, there's no specific receipt for group harmony.
Right. And most importantly, it is untracked by your financial systems. When you check your banking app the next day, it doesn't say dinner $33, social harmony tax $27.
It just says restaurant $60.
Exactly.
That is a staggering distinction.
Yeah.
I mean, we are culturally conditioned to feel immense guilt over a visible $5 coffee. We agonize over it while we silently hemorrhage $27 in invisible social costs without a second thought.
And that invisible social toll accumulates. Think about how many times a month you absorb a small cost to keep the peace.
Oh, wow.
You buy a round of drinks when it wasn't really your turn. You chip in for a coworker's gift even though you barely know them. You cover the slightly more expensive Uber ride.
Because it's just easier.
Right. It accumulates just as fast, if not faster, than a daily coffee habit. But we never scrutinize it because the social context acts as a psychological cloaking device.
A psychological cloaking device.
Yeah.
That is such a fascinating way to put it.
Yeah.
So, before we dive deeply into the behavioral science of exactly why our brains allow us to do this, why we let that cloaking device work on us, we just want to take a brief, calming pause. If this conversation is resonating with you, if you are enjoying this deep dive, we would love for you to subscribe and leave a comment to the Leone Patterns channel so you never miss an exploration.
We really value hearing from you.
We do. Building this community helps everyone, you, us, all of us, understand these deeply human patterns. We are genuinely grateful you are here.
Absolutely. So let us explore the science behind this.
Yeah, let's get into it. Why is that $27 loss so easily ignored by a brain that will simultaneously stress over a $5 coffee?
Well, it begins with the psychology of mental accounting. This is a framework developed by Richard Thaler, who actually won the Nobel Prize in economics for his work on this.
Okay, I've heard the term mental accounting, but I want to make sure I really grasp it. Can you explain how it operates inside our heads?
Sure. Thaler discovered that human beings do not treat all money equally, which completely violates traditional economic theory.
Because traditional economics says a dollar is a dollar.
Exactly. Traditional economics says a dollar is a dollar, no matter where it comes from or where it goes. But Thaler proved that we organize our financial activities into different rigid cognitive buckets.
Buckets. Yep.
We have a mental bucket for rent, we have a bucket for groceries, we have a bucket for vacation, and we have a very strictly monitored, highly scrutinized bucket for coffee or daily treats.
Right, so we mentally compartmentalize our money.
Yes. And we track that coffee bucket rigorously because it is an individual repetitive behavior. It is easy to audit.
So you do it every day.
Exactly. But shared social expenses don't fit neatly into a single monitorable bucket. They spill over into a nebulous social or entertainment bucket where the rules are incredibly loose.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy so I can really visualize it.
Go for it.
It's almost like a cognitive blind spot in our rearview mirror.
Okay.
When we look in the mirror, we can see the $5 coffee perfectly. It's right there, crisp and clear, and we are hyper-focused on it.
Right?
But there is a massive Mack truck of group expenses hiding right next to us in the blind spot, completely out of view, and we have absolutely no idea it's about to sideswipe our budget.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The Mack truck is in the blind spot, and the psychological mechanism that keeps that truck hidden is called social diffusion.
Social diffusion, what is that?
It's what happens when costs are shared among a group. Your sense of individual financial responsibility dissolves.
Wait, how does it dissolve? I still know I'm paying money.
You know you are paying money, but you don't encode the transaction identically.
What do you mean?
At the coffee shop, you encode the transaction as, I am choosing to spend $5 on myself.
Okay.
But at the restaurant, you encode it as, we are spending $480 together, and I am just doing my part for the group.
Oh, wow.
The specific mathematics of your individual consumption are completely glossed over by the brain. Your brain shifts from a framework of financial calculation to a framework of social participation.
Which leads to some truly fascinating and expensive behavior when we sit down to eat together.
It absolutely does. And there's a landmark study that proves just how profoundly this social diffusion alters our choices.
Okay, tell me about this study.
In 2004, behavioral economists Yuri Gneezy, Ernan Harouvi, and Hadas Yaffe conducted a field experiment in Haifa, Israel.
Okay.
And they didn't do this in a sterile lab. They went out into actual restaurants to observe real diners under different payment conditions.
Oh, that's cool. Tell me about the setup. How did they test this?
They took groups of diners and manipulated how they were told the bill would be handled, but they told them before they ordered.
Oh, so they knew going in.
Exactly. In one condition, the diners were told they would each receive individual separate checks.
Okay, standard stuff.
But in another condition, the diners were told in advance that the total bill would be split equally among everyone at the table.
Okay, let me pause you there.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting down with my friends, and I know we are splitting the bill evenly, I feel like human decency kicks in. I would assume people order less, or at least order very modestly, so they don't burden their friends with an inflated check.
That makes intuitive sense.
Right. Tell me I'm right about human nature here.
I really wish I could. But the data tells a completely different story.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The researchers found that when diners knew in advance that the bill was going to be split equally, they ordered 37% more than they did when they were paying individually.
37%. That is a staggering increase. Wait, I struggle to believe people are sitting at a nice dinner, actively, maliciously calculating how to financially exploit their friends. That sounds sociopathic.
It's not malicious, and it certainly isn't sociopathic.
Then what is it?
It is a subconscious, deeply ingrained game theoretic trap. The researchers term this the unscrupulous diner's dilemma.
Unscrupulous diner's dilemma.
Yes. And to understand it, we have to look at the defensive logic your brain runs when faced with a shared resource.
Okay, walk me through the logic.
Imagine you are at that table. You know the bill will be split evenly. You also know that you have zero control over what the other 7 people are going to order.
Right, I can't dictate their meals.
Now, suppose you expect that others might order expensive items. Maybe one person loves expensive wine. Maybe another always gets the seafood tower.
Yeah, there's always one.
Right. So, if you choose to order modestly, if you just get the $24 pasta, what happens when the bill comes?
I end up paying a portion of their seafood tower.
Exactly. Ordering modestly in an even split scenario means you are actively subsidizing the expensive preferences of the rest of the table.
Oh, I see.
Your brain recognizes that this is an unfair financial outcome for you. So, to protect yourself from being exploited, you subconsciously incentivize yourself to order a more expensive item too.
So it's like a defense mechanism.
Yes. You
Yeah.
think, well, if everyone else is going to go big, I might as well get the steak so I get my money's worth.
Oh, wow. So it's not about greed, it's about financial self-defense.
Precisely. But here is the tragedy of the unscrupulous diner's dilemma.
What happens?
If everyone at the table follows this exact same defensive logic, the Nash equilibrium, which is the stable state in game theory, where no individual has an incentive to change their strategy, becomes mutual overspending.
Everyone defensive orders the steak.
Everyone defensive orders the steak, everyone orders an extra drink, the collective bill skyrockets, and everyone ends up paying significantly more than they would have if they had just paid for themselves.
This sounds incredibly familiar. It sounds exactly like the classic prisoner's dilemma from social psychology.
It is the exact same underlying mechanism, just
I've-
applied to appetizers instead of prison sentences.
Okay, let's map that out because this is fascinating. In the standard prisoner's dilemma, you have 2 criminals in separate interrogation rooms. The police offer them both a deal.
Right.
If they both stay silent, they get a light sentence. If one turns on the other, the betrayer goes free and the silent one gets a heavy sentence. And if they both betray each other, they both get a medium-heavy sentence.
Right. So the optimal collective outcome is for both to stay silent and cooperate.
But because neither knows what the other is doing, they both panic. They realize that if the other person stays silent, betraying them gets them off scot-free. And if the other person does betray them, they also have to betray just to avoid the worst possible sentence.
Exactly.
So individual self-interest guarantees they both betray each other,
Yeah.
and they both get a worse outcome than if they had just cooperated.
Now apply that exact dynamic to the restaurant table.
Okay, if I'm at the table, cooperating or staying silent is ordering the modest pasta. Betraying the group is ordering the expensive steak.
Spot on.
If I order the cheap pasta, and I don't know what you're doing, my brain realizes that my only safe bet to not get financially screwed by your potential steak order is to just order the steak myself.
Yes. Just like the isolated prisoners, the diners individually incentivize themselves to order more regardless of what the other people are doing. It guarantees a suboptimal outcome for the entire group.
That is incredibly illuminating. It completely reframes why group dinners get so expensive.
It does.
But there is another piece of the puzzle here that I'm struggling with.
What's that?
Even if we overspend at dinner, why does it physically feel so much worse to buy a $5 coffee than it does to swallow that $27 overpayment? Why doesn't the dinner hurt more?
That brings us to a foundational concept introduced in 1996 by behavioral researcher Ofer Zellermeyer. He coined the term the pain of paying.
The pain of paying.
Yes. Zellermeyer discovered something that sounds counterintuitive at first. The psychological discomfort we feel when spending money is not directly tied to the actual monetary amount.
Wait, so spending more money doesn't necessarily cause more pain?
Not at all. The pain is tied almost entirely to the context of the transaction. The design of the spending moment determines the pain level.
Okay, so break down the $5 coffee through that lens.
The $5 latte is categorized as a high-pain transaction.
Why is it high pain?
First, the payment is immediate. You order and you must pay before you consume. Often, it involves handing over physical cash or an immediate card tap where you see the total glaring at you on a screen.
Right.
Second, it is a solo decision.
Right.
You have zero cover. You hold total isolated responsibility for that expense.
That makes sense.
And third, it has a high frequency. You do it every day, meaning you are constantly, repeatedly reminded of the outflow of your resources.
Okay, so it's a daily, undeniable friction point and the $27 dinner overpayment.
That is the definition of low pain.
How so?
Think about the context. First, the payment is usually deferred. You hand over a credit card, which means the actual money won't leave your bank account for weeks.
Oh, right.
This separates the consumption of the food from the financial hit. Second, it is a shared decision. The group decided to split it, which diffuses your individual guilt.
Yeah, that's social diffusion again.
Exactly. And most importantly, the social context. The warmth of the dinner, the laughter, the desire to be a good friend completely masks the cost.
This reminds me of the research by Drazen Prelek and George Lowenstein. They looked really deeply into this idea of decoupling, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Prelek and Lowenstein demonstrated that when we decouple the act of paying from the act of consuming, the psychological pain of paying drops off a cliff.
Wow.
A shared restaurant bill paid by credit card is the ultimate decoupling mechanism. The pleasure of the meal and the company is front and center. The abstract nature of dividing a large sum pushes the pain entirely into the background.
But here is where it gets absolutely fascinating for me. If we look at Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky's prospect theory, the work that won Kahneman the Nobel Prize, they established the principle of loss aversion.
A massively important concept in behavioral economics.
Yeah, the idea that human beings feel the pain of a loss twice as intensely as we feel the pleasure of an equivalent gain. Losing $10 hurts twice as much as finding $10 feels good.
Right.
But here's the insight, and tell me if I'm tracking this correctly. Because you, the listener, at that dinner table, never explicitly calculated the $27 overpayment in your head. Because you didn't itemize the receipt before agreeing to split it. You never actually perceived it as a loss.
That is a profound realization, and you are entirely correct. Loss aversion is a powerful psychological force, but it only triggers if a loss is consciously perceived by the brain.
Exactly. Think about the coffee. If you decide to skip your morning latte to save money, you feel that loss immediately. You are actively denying yourself a pleasure you expected to have.
Yeah.
Because of loss aversion, that $5 denial feels like a $10 psychological cost. Your brain protests loudly.
It does.
But because you never calculated the dinner overpayment, because the social diffusion and the low pain of paying masked it completely, really, your brain registers the psychological cost of losing that $27 as absolute zero.
You cannot mourn money you never mentally registered as yours to keep. The psychological cost of the latte is artificially inflated by loss aversion and visibility, and the psychological cost of the dinner overpayment is artificially erased by social cloaking.
That is wild. So we've established the deep science behind why we do this. We understand the mental accounting, the game theory, and the pain of paying.
Yeah, the foundational mechanics.
Right. But what does this all mean for our daily lives?
Yes. Let's move into the patterns. I want to look at how this invisible toll actually manifests in the real world, beyond just that one isolated dinner.
It shows up everywhere. It is present in any situation where there is a power dynamic, a shared experience, or an assumption of social conformity.
Give me an example. Consider a very common scenario that I'm sure many listeners will recognize. The classic office lunch trap.
Oh, this is a dangerous one. I remember being 23 and terrified of this exact scenario. Let's paint the picture.
Okay.
A group of coworkers goes out for Friday lunch. There is a wide mix of people, some senior management, some mid-level directors, and a few junior employees who are just starting out.
Right. Now, introduce the concept of social friction avoidance into that power dynamic.
Oh boy.
When the boss or a senior executive is sitting at the head of the table, the power dynamic creates massive social friction against asking for separate checks.
Because it feels insubordinate, or at least intensely awkward, to stop the flow of a professional gathering to do accounting.
Exactly. So what happens? The junior employee who is making an entry-level salary and aggressively budgeting their rent scans the menu and orders a simple $12 sandwich and a water.
Because they have to.
Right. But the senior executive who makes 4 times as much and is perhaps accustomed to a corporate expense account mentality orders a $30 steak salad and an appetizer for the table and a glass of wine.
And then the bill comes.
And the bill comes, the senior executive says, let's just throw down cards and split it.
And the junior employee is paralyzed.
Completely. The power dynamic makes speaking up professionally risky. They don't want to look like they aren't a team player.
So the bill is split evenly, and the junior employee ends up directly subsidizing the senior executive's lifestyle.
Yes. They swallow an enormous invisible toll because the professional and social friction of saying no to the boss feels far too dangerous.
That anxiety is so palpable. But it's not just face-to-face interactions where we see this pattern, is it?
Not at all.
We also see this exact behavioral vulnerability exploited by technology. Tech companies have mapped this neurological blind spot, and they use it.
They absolutely do.
Think about the fear of missing out, or FOMO, and how emotional triggers dictate our impulsive purchases. Look at modern e-commerce apps like Temu.
Yes, Temu and similar platforms use a very specific, highly engineered tactic that preys on this avoidance of friction and loss.
How do they do it?
They will send a bright, urgent notification to your phone offering 2 free gifts.
But there is always a catch.
Always. To claim those free gifts, the user has to spend an additional specific amount of money, say another $20, to reach a minimum order limit.
Right. The app manufactures a social pressure. Even though you are alone on your phone, they create a sense of urgency, a ticking clock, and a perceived loss.
Yes.
You are tricked into thinking, if I don't buy these extra things I don't even need right now, I am actively losing out on free gifts. You absorb an invisible financial cost buying $20 of unnecessary items simply to avoid the psychological friction of feeling like you missed a deal.
They weaponize the pain of loss against you.
Exactly.
Technology is constantly playing with these friction points. They know exactly how to lower the pain of paying to zero while maximizing the perceived social or emotional reward.
It's manipulative, but it works.
It does. In fact, we have become so aware of the awkwardness of group expenses that we have tried to use technology to solve it.
You mean like payment apps?
Yes. We turn to digital peer-to-peer, or P2P payment apps. Venmo, Zelle, Cash App.
Right. And on the surface, they seem like the perfect, rational solution to everything we talked about. No more doing math on a napkin at the restaurant. No more unscrupulous diners.
Right.
One person pays the bill, and then they just send everyone a Venmo request for their exact, precise amount. Problem solved, right?
From a purely mathematical standpoint, yes. According to AI-mediated exchange theory, or AI-MET, these apps do serve a highly functional purpose.
Tell me about AI-MET.
AI-MET is a fascinating field that studies how artificial intelligence, algorithms, and digital interfaces mediate human-to-human relationships. And the research confirms that P2P apps do successfully reduce the immediate face-to-face awkwardness of splitting a bill. They ensure mathematical fairness.
But I'm guessing there's a catch here, too.
There is a significant dark pattern here that we rarely acknowledge.
What is it?
When we outsource our financial interactions to an algorithm, we experience what researchers call the loss of emotion.
The loss of emotion. What does that mean in practice? How does an app lose emotion?
Think about the formalization and standardization of a Venmo request. It strips all the nuance, grace, and human emotion from the exchange.
Okay, I can see that.
Jiang and colleagues published a deeply revealing study in 2014 showing that the mere presence of exact, calculated money primes people to view relationships as businesslike.
Wait, let me make sure I'm getting this. Are you saying that when I send a Venmo request for exactly $7.42 to a friend, rather than just rounding down to $5 or saying, hey, just grab my coffee next time, it shifts the entire dynamic of the friendship?
It fundamentally alters it. It removes the warmth. It feels petty, even if it is mathematically correct.
Ah.
The relationship becomes transactional. You are no longer friends sharing a meal. You are accounts settling a ledger. The research shows this actually increases peer pressure and distrust over time.
Why does it increase distrust? Shouldn't fairness create trust?
Because every interaction is being meticulously audited by an algorithm rather than smoothed over by human grace. When you rely on the algorithm to enforce fairness, you stop relying on trust.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Okay, let's connect this to how we actually naturally build trust as human beings.
Yeah.
Let's look at social psychology and the principle of reciprocity.
Let's do it.
Reciprocity isn't just about paying someone back. It is deeply embedded in how human culture survives.
It is arguably the foundation of all social cohesion. We survive by exchanging favors, grace, and effort.
Right. There was a fascinating study done at the University of Southern California regarding reciprocity and something as simple and non-financial as holding a door open for a stranger.
I love this study.
It's so good. Researchers had Confederates hold doors for people walking into a building, but they varied the level of effort the door holder exerted.
They created a high-effort condition and a low-effort condition.
Exactly. In the low-effort condition, the person holding the door was passive. They might be looking down to their phone, leaning against the frame, just casually propping the door open with their foot.
Right, so they're helping, but barely.
Yeah. It was helpful, but emotionally detached. Now, in the high-effort condition, the person made direct eye contact, smiled warmly, and genuinely held the door open, acknowledging the stranger.
And the physical outcome getting through the door was identical in both scenarios.
Yes, but the psychological outcome was striking.
It was.
When the door holder exerted high effort, making that human, emotional connection, 84% of the people walking through said thank you.
That's a huge percentage.
It is. But it went much further than just a polite greeting. The researchers wanted to test if that reciprocity extended to actual physical assistance.
Okay.
So a few moments later, they had the door holder accidentally drop a box of pens all over the floor in front of the person they just helped.
Testing the depth of the reciprocal bond.
Yes. And the results were amazing. 64% of the people who received the high-effort door hold stopped what they were doing and helped pick up the pens.
Wow.
But for the people who received the low-effort door hold, only 19% helped.
That's a massive drop.
It is. The high-effort favor, the injection of human connection and grace, inspired a massive increase in people willing to pay it forward.
This connects directly to a framework developed by psychologists Irwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor called social penetration theory.
Social penetration theory.
Okay, understand how relationships develop. They use the visual of a wedge driving into an onion.
Peeling back the layers of the onion.
Yes. We build intimacy with other people by moving from breadth, superficial, wide-ranging topics to depth, which is vulnerable, personal information, and reliance.
Right.
You drive the wedge deeper through mutual vulnerability, and navigating this requires reading social cues.
Okay.
Psychologist Mark Snyder identified that people we call high self-monitors are individuals who are very adept at reading these social cues to fit in and reciprocate appropriately.
So they just naturally get it.
They do. They instinctively understand that relationships require a give and take of effort, grace, and minor uncalculated favors.
So here's the pattern we're falling into with our technology. When we use a PDP app to mathematically request $3.42, we are entirely removing the high ever.
Completely.
We are removing the grace, the smile, the eye contact. We are removing the emotional self-disclosure that actually drives the relationship wedge deeper.
We are trading human intimacy for mathematical exactness. By using the app to eliminate the friction of who owes what, we inadvertently eliminate the very mechanism. The reciprocal grace, the small favors, the I've got you this time, you get me next time, that builds deep, resilient social bonds.
This brings us to a crucial pivot in our deep dive. Up until now, we have been looking at how we swallow costs to avoid friction, how our brains create blind spots, and how our attempts to fix it mathematically can actually damage our relationships.
Right.
It is very, very easy to listen to this and feel a sense of judgment. You might be sitting there right now feeling like you are weak for not speaking up at that dinner table.
Or feeling foolish for letting the mental accounting blind spot cost you hundreds of dollars a year.
Exactly. But it is vital that we reframe this entirely. If you feel any sense of shame, failure, or weakness about your behavior at that dinner table, we need to pivot away from that right now.
Absolutely.
Listen to us very carefully. You are not broken for overpaying at dinner.
No, you're not.
You are not weak for avoiding the friction of asking for exact change from a coworker. Your behavior is not a flaw. It is not something to fix. It makes complete, profound human sense.
And to understand exactly why it makes sense, we need to look at some groundbreaking, almost poetic research from game theory on embodied decision-making.
Okay.
Specifically, we need to explore the concept of body reservoir governance and thermodynamic cost.
This is where the science gets truly mind-bending.
It really does. Traditional game theory, the kind that dictates the purely rational mathematical choices we discussed earlier with the diners and the prisoners, assumes that organisms should use highly conditional strategies to survive and not be exploited.
Right.
The most famous of these strategies is called tit for tat.
Meaning, I will cooperate with you as long as you cooperate with me, but the exact second you cheat me, I will instantly retaliate. A perfectly balanced ledger of behavior.
Exactly. It sounds perfectly logical on paper, but recent research models of embodied agents show that running a continuous tit-for-tat strategy in the real world requires massive, constant, unending computation.
Because you constantly have to be on high alert. You can never relax.
Yes. You have to constantly classify inputs. Is this person being fair to me right now? Is this 70 cents discrepancy an insult or an accident?
Right. You're always analyzing.
You have to maintain that memory perfectly. You have to conditionally select your output for every interaction. For a biological organism, this continuous calculation is not just a mental exercise. It imposes a massive physical and thermodynamic cost.
Thermodynamic cost.
Yes, the brain uses 20% of the body's energy. It literally burns glucose and ATP to constantly audit your social environment for exact fairness.
Okay, let me try to translate this into an analogy.
Please do.
So it's like keeping your phone's GPS running in the background while you have 10 other apps open. Running a constant fairness calculator in your brain, auditing every single person at the table, tracking every appetizer, running the tit-for-tat program burns a massive amount of your biological battery.
It does?
It is literally physically exhausting. So your body, to protect itself from dying of exhaustion, just puts your brain in low power mode and agrees to split the bill.
That is exactly what is happening. The researchers found that humans and many embodied agents actually operate on a 3-layer architecture called the body reservoir.
The body reservoir.
Think of your physical body and your nervous system as a deep, ancient reservoir that has adapted over millions of years to a baseline of cooperation.
The habituated baseline. Our default setting to save energy is just to cooperate.
Yes. And layered on top of that physical reservoir is a metacognitive policy. The brain's overriding rule for navigating society is trust the body unless it signals severe discomfort.
Wait, so let me break this down for you, the listener. The reason you don't speak up at the dinner table when the bill is split unfairly isn't because you are weak-willed or a pushover or bad with money.
No.
It is because constantly calculating exact fairness literally drains your physical energy.
The research absolutely confirms this. The body is the true decision maker in that moment. It expresses cooperation automatically, instinctively, because overriding our adapted nature to cooperate incurs a massive thermodynamic cost.
Wow.
Think about what it takes to interrupt the flow of a dinner. You have to stop the conversation. You have to engage the cognitive machinery required to calculate itemized bills, calculate separate tax, calculate separate tips.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
And you have to manage the emotional fallout of confronting the group. Doing all of that requires a massive spike of metabolic energy that your body actively, biologically tries to avoid.
You absorb the financial loss because protecting the relationship and protecting your own mental and physical energy is a brilliant evolutionary adaptation. You are not broken. You are human.
Your body is running an incredibly complex, high-dimensional calculation in a fraction of a second. It weighs the $27 loss against the massive thermodynamic and relational cost of initiating conflict. And it decides, correctly, that absorbing the financial loss is the more efficient path for your overall well-being and survival within the group.
That is such a powerful reframe. It completely strips away the guilt. We aren't failing at personal finance when we do this. We are succeeding at biological efficiency and social cohesion.
And if we pull this idea upward, away from just the dinner bill or the office lunch, we uncover a much deeper truth about human connection. We begin to see that money is never just about money.
It's always about something more human underneath.
Money is a profound signaling tool. We use it to signal safety, to signal love, to signal belonging, and to signal our place within a tribe.
Right.
When we navigate these invisible social tolls, we are not just managing our wallets, we are managing the emotional fabric of our communities.
Which brings us to a concept that ties all of this together, the emotional labor tax.
Emotional labor is the invisible work of managing feelings.
Yeah.
It is the effort required to soothe tensions in a meeting. It is the work of noticing who is being excluded from a conversation and bringing them back in.
It's a lot of work.
It is checking in on colleagues, remembering birthdays, and yes, smoothing over the awkwardness when the bill arrives so nobody feels uncomfortable.
It is the glue that keeps teams and families and friend groups functioning. But this tax is not distributed equally, is it?
It is not. Decades of sociological research consistently highlight that the burden of this emotional labor tax falls disproportionately on women, and especially on women of color.
That's a really important point.
They're often expected, culturally and structurally, to be the ones absorbing the friction. They are expected to be the ones managing the group's comfort, reading the room, and doing the invisible work to ensure everyone else feels at ease.
And just like the financial toll, this emotional toll is invisible to the people not paying it, but the costs to the individual are very, very real.
Highly real.
It leads to profound burnout. It leads to career stagnation. Because if you are spending your thermodynamic energy constantly managing other people's feelings and smoothing over conflicts, you don't have the energy left to advance your own goals or advocate for your own ideas.
Right.
It leads to deep, quiet resentment.
When you swallow the cost of a group dinner, or when you do the invisible emotional labor to keep a team functioning, you are paying a tax. You are paying to maintain the cultural and relational web.
You are.
You are the one expending your biological and emotional energy to prevent the social structure from fracturing.
And while that is a noble, profoundly human thing to do, it is also exhausting. It takes a toll on who you are allowed to be in those spaces.
Which raises an important perhaps provocative question for us to consider as we look at how our modern society is changing.
That's the question.
We touched briefly on how online interactions, with their anonymity and slower pacing, change our behavior. Research into online self-disclosure shows that the internet allows people to engage in deeper vulnerability without the immediate risk of physical social friction.
Because you aren't face-to-face.
Exactly. They can reveal their true self because they aren't worried about the immediate, visceral, thermodynamic cost of a face-to-face conflict.
You could just type a message, express your true feelings, and walk away. You don't have to manage the other person's immediate facial expression.
Exactly. But it makes you wonder about the real world. In our day-to-day physical lives, we are constantly absorbing these social friction costs.
Yeah.
We're constantly paying the emotional labor tax to keep everyone around us comfortable and to avoid burning our own energy on conflict. But what if our constant evolutionary pursuit of keeping everyone else comfortable is exactly what is keeping our true selves hidden?
Wow. If we are always paying the tax to blend in, to not rock the boat, to keep the peace, we never actually show up as who we really are. We trade authenticity for harmony.
It is a profound tension between our biological drive for social harmony and our deep psychological need for authentic expression.
That's a lot to think about. As we bring this deep dive to a close, let's just slowly look back at the journey we've taken today.
We started by looking at the invisible social toll, that quiet, universal moment of overpaying at dinner just to avoid conflict.
Right. And we saw how our mental accounting creates blind spots, making us obsess over a $5 coffee while ignoring larger shared social expenses.
We saw how our attempts to fix this friction mathematically with apps and algorithms can sometimes strip the emotion and the vital reciprocity out of our relationships, trading real intimacy for sterile exactness.
Most importantly, we learned that this behavior is not a weakness. It is a biological adaptation. Calculating every penny and fighting every battle requires a thermodynamic exhaustion that your body brilliantly and actively avoids.
And we recognize the emotional labor tax, the invisible work of keeping the peace that so many carry, often without recognition.
It leaves us with one quiet reflection worth carrying with you today. Your relationships are worth more than the exact math of a receipt, but your energy is worth protecting too. If this conversation felt true for you, if something in here landed, we would love for you to subscribe to Leone Patterns so you never miss what we explore next.
Leave a comment and tell us, what did this bring up for you? We read every single one.
We are building a community here, people who think about money differently. Not as a number to chase, but as a human experience to understand.
You are not alone in this, and we are genuinely glad you are here at Leone Patterns.
Same pace, same questions. See you then.